what I started seeing is a lot of us, and I know I was very guilty of this, think that we feel the way we do because of something out there is either triggering it or provoking it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel good because I got a compliment. I feel bad because my boss, you know, just gave me a bad review, or I got a phone bill that I wasn't expecting, or something. It's like we all think there's something outside there. If you just treat me right, then I'll feel better.
Yeah.
And what I started seeing was that I can feel worse or better depending on how my thoughts are. So to go back to your question of challenging them, or I've learned actually not to do that, because the thing I see now is that thought is a gift.
Mm-hmm.
It really is a gift, and I have no idea what I'm saying right now, but it's some kind of spooky spiritual energy that goes through our minds.
Yeah,
and it's like it's a raw material.
Yeah.
And it keeps flowing like a stream, like a river. It's always going to keep going. Or buses. There's always going to be another one. It always continues a flow
mm-hmm.
through your mind. So if you were to try and stop that or challenge it, it'd be like you'd be disrupting the system.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, where I live now, I live right in the center of Jerusalem, and I live near a very busy market. And the buses come here, and they go all over the city. So there's a bus stop not far from my house, a few blocks, and there's buses constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm going to visit a friend and I'm looking for, let's say, the 74,
yeah,
and the number 18 comes, I don't have to stand in the middle of the street and say, stop.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want that bus.
Yeah.
Everybody stop.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, that would cause probably an accident. It would cause chaos, and it would make me very unpopular. So that's not very helpful.
Definitely. Yeah.
So I just watch the 18 go by,
uh-huh.
and the 32, and there's a 74. So the 74 I want, and so I get on and I go to visit my friend.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that with thoughts. When I have an uncomfortable thought, and I do, you know, like I'm human and I can have an uncomfortable thought,
mm-hmm.
I've learned not to fight it. And there's no need, in my understanding, to color it, name it, you know, challenge it. It's already happened.
Yeah.
You know, to me, that's like trying to get the toothpaste back in the tube,
mm-hmm.
right? The thought has already happened. I have free will to decide what to do with that. Mm-hmm. I can either shout at the bus, you know, for like getting in the way, or I can just let it go because it's nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
Just let it go. Now, people say then, but that's hard. How do you do that with a painful thought, like, or a painful memory, or, you know, the PTSD that I was going through? And I see now that I think that actually one of my favorite quotes, the man who put the kind of ideas, this new paradigm in psychology I'm talking about, his name was Sydney Banks. You know, if your listeners want to look him up, sydneybanks.com is a great resource. And Sydney Banks, his favorite quote, my favorite quote of his is that if only people could learn not to be afraid of their own experience, mm-hmm. that would change the world. If only you could learn not to be afraid of your own experience, that would change the world. Because if you think about all the distress that happens in the world, including like hate and violence, you know, racism, sexism, like all that stuff, all that hate that's going on, is coming from, and I'm going to use the word innocent, like an innocent misunderstanding of what happens in our heads. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you an example. This understanding that I'm using with my clients, I've got colleagues who use it in a lot of different areas. Like I'm using it with trauma and back pain and things like that. I've got friends who use it in the corporate world and in family counseling, addictions. There's a treatment center now in Florida that's using this approach. Mm. And a friend of mine uses it in prisons in England, and she's in 2 prisons near Birmingham and Nottingham in England. And she's taken these ideas into the prison. And I went last year when I was in England, I went to visit her, and I went into the prison with her. And this is high security prison. We're talking about murderers, gangbangers, armed robbers, you know, really, really serious guys.
Yeah.
And she's been working with a small group of these guys for about maybe a year, six months at least. And she'd been teaching them these ideas. And when I was there, we were I was privileged enough to see them on their like graduation of this program, like a peer mentoring program, and they were then going to go on and mentor other guys on their wing.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, I was in a room with like, say 15 of these guys, and there was me and my friend and a couple of other practitioners, facilitators. There was so much love in that room and respect. It was, I was in tears.
Yeah.
These guys, I mean, these guys are like tattooed, you know, like some of them aren't getting out ever, you know, they had so much love and respect for each other because they had seen so clearly that the reason they were sat there was because they had a thought and then they acted on it. Mm-hmm. Because they innocently thought it was truth, that they thought it was real, that they had to kill or they had to rob, they had to whatever, you know, that they had that thought, so it must be true. Like, you know, like going back to the special effects thing, if you think it's, you know, that dog is talking, then maybe dogs can talk. You know, it's like this thought, this raw material we have that goes through our minds. I can either be creative with it and have joy with it, or I can have anxiety, or I can create violence and havoc with it. And so these men were so clear on that they'd misunderstood the thoughts that they were having. And that's why they were sitting there. It was turning their lives around. And they'd become free of the guilt and I mean, I'm not saying they weren't sorry for what they'd done. They really were. They were just these amazing human beings who just saw truth now rather than blame and anger. Mm-hmm. And the next day, we actually had a meeting with the governor. And he said that his prison officers had said they've seen the level of violence going down on the wing because these guys are walking away from trouble instead of causing it, right? Because they know that that's not the answer anymore. And then on the third day, we watched these men give a presentation to the other guys on the wing who were lining up to come and hear what was happening. Mm-hmm. And to see this transformation in people, and I've seen it with the people I work with in terms of trauma and anxiety and you know, all that stuff. It's when you see that you are not your thoughts, and there actually is nothing you have to do about it because the system is built so that the thoughts will keep going. That's why you don't actually have to do anything, which I think this is what people find really hard to comprehend. And that's way too simple for my difficult problems. You don't understand what I've been through because I know that's how I reacted. Yeah. But I want to use my little example here. I have a little prop. And it's my little snow globe. It's a little camel. You see it? So people who are just listening, like imagine a snow globe. Yeah. If you shake up a snow globe, right, the snow is going to keep, like every time I shake it, it's going to keep being mixed up. Yeah. And I think that's what that's what I was doing in my PTSD in that loop of reliving and the blaming and the anger and hurting myself and all that negative stuff. But it's also with, like, I only went to the psychiatrist briefly in that time. And I remember all she said to me was, can you tell me what happened? And what do you feel about what happened? And I'm like, I was like shocked because I could stay at home and relive it. How was going into her office and reliving it going to help? You know, all that was doing was mixing it up. It was shaking up the snow globe again. Mm-hmm. But the brilliant thing about snow globes is that if I just hold it still, then it will just settle on its own. And like the wisdom of my mind shutting off when it got too painful and going like the hairdryer, if you actually just let your thinking alone, it will actually settle on its own. Mm-hmm. Now, few of us have the patience or the interest in doing that because a lot of us, especially the people who are probably listening, are very much do it, fix it people. Tell me what to do. I'll journal. I'll write. I'll go to India. I'll do, you know, whatever. Tell me what to do. Yeah. You know, yeah. That sitting there and doing nothing is actually very hard. So what I'm not suggesting to actually sit there and do nothing. I'm saying get on with the next right thing. So when I was presented with these ideas, I found them very threatening because my story that I'd been telling myself over and over again, and I would happily tell you and I'd happily tell him, had become part of my identity. So to let go of that story of I'm the girl who was attacked 3 times, or I'm the girl who was in the movies, or I'm, you know, like this, whatever stories we have that we tell ourselves, to let go of that was actually quite threatening. But I found that that's actually where the freedom is that there's a whole nother world of you waiting to happen once you let go of that tiny little story. Once I realized the story I was holding on to so desperately was actually very small. and look what's happened to my life since I let go of it, you know, like traveling around the world and working with movie stars and now writing a book and, you know, like how did that happen?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, of course. And it's, I think now, I think obviously after listening to all this, it's something that, like we mentioned at the start of the episode, is it's sometimes quite hard for people to understand. And as you said there, like, you don't understand my problems are way bigger than what you're saying. You know, it's not just a simple matter of I've got thoughts in my head and I can just like kind of get rid of the bad ones and go into the good ones. Because for some people, they it's always, or what they feel is that it's always bad thoughts, is that constantly in their brain, like, you know, when you're dealing with stuff like depression, and the way that people deal with it is that they just lock themselves in more and more. So I can understand that maybe they're just submerging all their sort of happy thoughts or all their positive thoughts and keeping the bad ones out. But it's quite difficult for them to kind of challenge that, if you know what I mean. I'm personally someone who suffers with anxiety quite a lot. I'm a very stressful person, and I think the main reason for that is I put a lot of like, well, I need to be this within this time. I need to do this with my career, and I need to become the best that I could possibly come, and I need to make myself and everyone around me very proud of myself. And I'm like, I don't really want to do that. And the main thing around it is that I've put myself in a state of constant anxiety that sometimes there's no thoughts. Well, I feel that there's no thoughts behind it. Sometimes I'll just feel worried and anxious, and then someone will be like, well, what are you feeling anxious about? I'm like, I don't know. Generally, there's nothing in my head that I'm feeling anxious about. I'm just feeling anxious, and I can understand to a level that there is sort of subconscious and submerged thoughts there. You know, there's still thoughts. They're still going on. They're not on the top of my brain where I can pick one out and be like, this is exactly what's keeping me anxious. But I know for a fact that sometimes I just feel worried and I don't even know why. You know, there's no thought behind it. There's no anything behind it. So I can imagine there's a lot of people that go through that and go through it with like, you know, so the way they deal with other people socially, their cognition, if they're depressed, if they're anxious, I would imagine that would be the case as well. I'd never like to think that I'm the only person that's going through, you know, because I definitely am.
You're definitely not the only person.
Not at all. Yeah, definitely. So I can understand, and I think the main aspect is we always try and find a way to kind of deal with our journey in the best possible way. We've always said that psychology I've always said psychology touches us in different ways depending on what we've went through and how it is that we were how our mental health deteriorated, and whether that deteriorated into mental illness or what we would call mental illness, because I think another interesting kind of thing that I kind of understood there is that when you say the myth of low self-esteem, is that we tend to give things names and tend to kind of make a big story about them when we don't really need to. It reminds me a lot of Zen meditation, and I don't know if you've personally looked into or kind of know a lot about that, but I had I think over the last year and a half, I've been really intrigued into Zen meditation because I found that's a way of stopping. I'm someone who's like 1,000,000 miles an hour. You know, I'm always thinking. I'm a business graduate. I work in business. I work in management, and I work in like 2 different businesses, and the podcast. And I'm always thinking of new things that I can do. So how is it that I could not stop my thoughts, but be in peace with my thoughts, not have to fight each and every single one. And I actually do a bit of guided meditation right at the end of every episode, because I feel like it's a good way to kind of go, like you would say with the traffic. Imagine there's traffic on a really kind of long motorway, and cars are going in and out of each other, undertaking and overtaking and beeping at each other. And your first initial thing that you want to do is you want to go and stop every car and be like, no, you go there, you go there, you go there. And you want to organize and schedule everything. But sometimes the best thing to do is kind of just to sit back and watch the cars go. Like watch the thoughts as they happen, instead of kind of trying to change them and trying to stop them and trying to understand what's positive and what's negative and what to kind of do there. And I feel that it's basically what Zen meditation is, because you're concentrating more on your breathing, you're concentrating on your physical surroundings, on your sort of sounds and senses more than the thoughts that's in your head. But if the thoughts do come, that's fine. You know, it's just very easily going, you know, it's okay that a thought came. It's normal, but I don't have to give it my full attention, and I don't have to take away from my peace to go back into this and deal with this right this second. So it's very similar to both sort of aspects there, and of how to challenge your thoughts. People can take of it that, you know, challenge your thoughts doesn't mean that you have to challenge each and every single thought. And challenging your thoughts doesn't mean sit down and fight with it. It just means I don't have to make you my everything right now. I don't have to concentrate on you so much. I can just kind of move on to the next thought, like you say with the buses. Okay, I don't want you. I don't want you. I want this guy. And you kind of just move on your life from there. So it's really quite interesting, but I can understand why there's so many people out there who will listen to this and kind of go, you just don't know what I've been through.